So I have gotten question after question after question from folks who are thinking about applying to schools in the States from overseas. And I've always felt so bad that I've not been able to provide as much or as helpful information as I think would be necessary to make a decision about applying to schools in the States as an international student. And so I thought, who better to answer these sorts of questions than someone who is actually an international student? And I am lucky enough to have an amazing cohort mate who is also an international student. And I have seen her sort of have to navigate these systems and documents and processes year after year. So I asked her if she would be willing to do an interview with me, sort of about what all of that has been like for her in her experience, as well as talk about, her career trajectory, because she is also someone who is pursuing forensic psychology as a career within the clinical psychology sort of umbrella. And I don't know many people who are doing that, and I find it very interesting. Little known fun fact, I actually at one point very, very briefly considered going into forensic psychology as a specialization myself, but decided not to for a multitude of reasons. But she is someone who has been on that career path since day one, for as long as I have known her, which is quite a few years at this point. She has talked about wanting to be a forensic psychologist. And so we'll also talk a little bit about that and sort of steps she has taken along the way. And so yeah, as always, I hope that this video is helpful to folks who have these questions. And if you have any follow-up questions for her, feel free to leave them down in the comments and I will ask her and get responses for you all. But yeah, let's just jump right into the interview. Hey, hello, my name is JoJo and welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, welcome. Okay, minor technical difficulties, but we're all good.
As always.
Yes, of course, inevitable with Zoom. How are you? I'm good. Thank you so much for agreeing to talk.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. So, I mean, they already know me, so just go ahead and introduce yourself.
So my name is Helene. I'm an international student from Belgium, who is now a clinical PhD student in the same program in the same year as JoJo. I moved to the United States in 2016, and I've been here kind of throughout, except for like 1 year. I currently live in Connecticut, so I'm getting like the New England vibes. Yeah, and I'm a dog mom. I think that's a pretty important part of my personality, who I am. And I hope to graduate next year.
Yes, yes. A beautiful dog mom, by the way. Both of you and Aspen. So beautiful. Yeah, so I mean, this is really just gonna be like you telling me a little bit about, your experience as an international student. I have so many people who have like reached out to me and asked me like what they should do or what processes they should follow, and I have very limited knowledge of all of that, but I know that this is a process that you've been navigating since before day one of the program, and you've been through a lot. I mean, we've talked a bit about things that have come up in terms of your international status. And so, yeah, I guess we could just sort of start with like what did you, well, we'll start with this. Like, how did you decide to go to school in the States?
Yeah. So when I started studying psychology back in Belgium, I was always interested in like forensic psychology, but that just does not exist. There are no programs, there are very little training opportunities. So I knew that for what I was interested in, I had to go elsewhere. And when I was studying in Belgium, I did a semester abroad to Estonia, and I had an American professor there who was also kind of on his semester abroad, who was teaching teaching forensic psychology. So that way I kind of got to know about like the forensic psych world in the United States. And I was really interested in that. And he really encouraged me. He was like, if this is something that you want to do, if you want to continue with school after you're done in Belgium, I think the United States would be a great place to focus on what you really want to learn and what you want your career to be in. So then I started looking into like the different forensic psychology programs, like what they entailed, and I decided to go for it. I think I was 22 when I graduated in Belgium, so I didn't feel ready yet to, go into the real world and start working. So it felt like a really, really nice opportunity for me to actually like specialize in a type of psychology that was just not offered in Belgium. So that's how I decided to come here. And I think I had always been really interested and fascinated by the US. Like I love traveling here. So I was like, oh, let's go. So yeah.
Had you visited the States before?
I had, yeah, a couple of times with my family.
Nice, 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 nice.
Yeah.
For the folks who may not be familiar, could you just give like a brief, I guess, summary of like what forensic psychology is?
Yeah, so forensic psychology focuses on providing treatment and assessment to offenders. Like that is one part of it. You can do that in prisons, in jails, but also in state hospitals or forensic type of hospitals. Those are usually like high security, so there are walls. There is like extra security guards usually on the ward. And then forensic psychology, another part, also really focuses on like law enforcement and the police and like the military part of it. So the program that I went to, a lot of my classmates actually became like FBI agents or are now working for the police and stuff like that because they learn a lot about like the legal system and how like crime works and stuff like that. But I decided to focus on the more clinical part of it.
Right, yeah. Yeah. So if we had to like compare it to something like when you watch like crime documentaries or like the psychologists who do like those sort of like assessments in the court cases and all, like that's sort of the realm of like what you do or what you want to do.
Yes, exactly. It's like, providing assessment if a person has done a crime and they want to see like what is their personality like are they mentally ill, that kind of stuff. And I think another like famous thing that forensic psychologists do, like more the law enforcement side, is like behavioral analysis. If a crime has been committed, like who is the type of person that might have done that?
Oh yeah, like the profiles.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll come back to that in a little bit because I know that that's like the more interesting part of this interview, but we got to go over like the technical stuff first. So yeah, going back to international student stuff. So you decide that you want to go to school in the States. So tell me a little bit about like, yeah, sort of how you initiated that process and sort of the steps you took to get there.
I first started looking at funding, in all honesty, because when I started looking at how expensive programs were, it was really daunting, and I knew that I would not be able to do this if I had to pay for everything myself. So I actually applied to a lot of like different scholarships for Europeans going to the United States, or maybe even like scholarships that were based in the schools. And I got a Fulbright scholarship, which is like a governmental type of like exchange scholarship. But I know that there's like different countries also have different specific scholarship for people who want to go to the United States. So I wanted to secure financial means to come here before I would actually like submit any of my applications. But then after that, I went on like the APA website to kind of look at like programs that focus on forensic psychology. And then I decided to focus on like programs that were on the East Coast so that I was still close to Belgium or just like a flight away from Belgium. And then I had like made a list of programs that seemed really cool. And then I actually contacted the American professor that I met in Estonia to kind of see if they were legit. Because there were a couple that looked really nice, and he was like, yeah, they don't have a good reputation. So it was nice to have someone next to me who actually knew about the reputation about these programs. And then after that, it's kind of the same process, the same application process that a lot of like the United States students have to go through. I actually also had to do like the GRE, so I had to go to Brussels, to the capital of Belgium, to do that because there is like one office building that offers the GRE
Mhm.
twice a year. So you have to sign up for it, make sure that you have a place. I think I did mine in November, I want to say.
Mhm.
So I had to prepare for that. I had to do that. And then I also had to do an English language test, which is called the TOEFL, just to show that, you're proficient in English and you can follow classes there. And additionally, I also had to have my European transcripts transferred to the letter system because the way that it's done in Belgium, it is, a number system out of 20, and it had to be transferred to the letters system in the United States. So you have to send it to an American-based company. I think it's called Wes, and that costs a lot of money, and it has to be done like officially through your school. So it was like a lot of back and forth that way. So there were like I think the two extra things as an international student were doing the language proficiency test and then also transferring your transcripts. Um, and then with a lot of the schools, I actually ran into issues with paying like the application fee because some of them didn't accept like European credit cards. Some of them only
Oh,
accepted checks. So it was like a whole ordeal too. So I really recommend that people, if you feel like you want to study in the United States, like start a year ahead and collecting like information about everything that is needed. Email with the admissions offices at the schools that you're interested in because they will be able to give you a lot of information, and open up the application, start filling it out because then you'll realize everything that you like kind of need to do. And just yeah, get started like way ahead. Like I would really recommend like a year ahead just to not have any stress. Um, I mean, one thing that was also different from my college experience is Belgium was like the importance of reference letters. Like I really did not know a lot of professors in my program. I started with like 700 people in like these big lecture rooms. We never had moments where it was like only 20 or 15 people. So it was very like non-personal. And then suddenly I needed to provide like 3 reference letters. And I was like, who the hell am I gonna ask? Like my professors don't know me. I'm just like a student number. Um, so I would say if you're interested in coming to the United States, to kind of reach out to your professors and maybe ask if you can help with some of their research projects or like some of like the doctoral students' research projects so that you have people who can write reference letters. I eventually got a reference letter from because I was on internship in my last year, so my supervisor wrote one. I got one from my master's thesis supervisor, but that again, I think was very like not personal if I look back at like the
yeah.
letters that I receive now versus the ones that I got back then. And then also the American professor that I met in Estonia also wrote one. But that's definitely different than it is in Europe or in my experience at least.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a common, I think, struggle that people who are applying to grad schools and generally have with like getting reference letters, especially like folks who are applying to graduate school straight from undergrad, where like, yeah, they're in these classes of like 100, 200
Yeah.
students, and it's impossible for the professor to know every single person. Um, but also like, wow, you had to like do a lot
Yeah,
to
yeah, and
just
it was
even
really
like
like
prepare to apply.
yeah, it was a lot of like trial and error that I was like, what else do you need from me?
Right. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
yeah.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so that's I think the application process, just like all the additional things that you have to provide.
Yeah. And then you talked about funding. A question that I get a lot with, again, people applying to general grad school in general, but also a lot from international students is like how to go about understanding funding from grad programs. And I mean, we know like our program only recently became a fully funded program, and I'm curious about like what your experience was with other programs. Like, were all of the programs you applied to fully funded, or were some of them only partially funded?
Yeah, so when I went to like my forensic psychology program, I had my funding from Fulbright, but that was the only thing that I had. So I definitely had to like substitute with my family's savings, unfortunately. And I know that there were other funding or like scholarship opportunities out there that I had also applied for, but that I just didn't receive from my school. It was also a, a school with not that much funding for students or like international students, I would say. So maybe also just look at whether your school has specific funding opportunities for international students, because there were other programs that were maybe like a little bit less prestigious than the one I went to, but they had like any international student that would attend there got like 10K to start with. So it's like important to look on the website to see what is like automatically available or what your opportunities are to apply for.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. So you go through all of that. You get into a program, you end up at our school, and I've explained on my channel a couple of times sort of how our program works, where like you have to go through the master's program first, and then you can apply to the PhD program, but you're not guaranteed to get in, and the whole Hunger Games of it all.
Yeah.
But you and I have known each other since the master's program.
Yes.
We had several classes together.
Yes.
We went through hell and back together. Yeah, so sort of like what was your experience like as an international student, like once you got here?
Yeah. Um, so I think in the master's program, it was not necessarily that different from like US born students, because we were not doing a lot of clinical training. I think the biggest thing that stood out for me, and like right from the start, is how we could make money and where we could work. So as international students, there are very, very strict rules about the fact that you can only work at school, and there's very limited hours that you can do that. So I would hear people talk about how they had like other jobs to pay, for school, or to substitute for rent, or, for buying nice things. And I really had to like fight with a lot of other students to get like TA jobs or like any type of like job at the school, because that was the only place I was allowed to work. But other than that, I didn't really notice that much of a difference. I do know that if you want to do an internship during your master's, for example, there's some people at our school that do like a substance use based internship in their second year of the master's. You need to be in the United States for 2 consecutive semesters before you can actually do even an unpaid internship. Because I know that there was another international student, because of COVID, had first done a semester at home and then a semester in the United States. So she had done a full year, but she was not eligible to do an internship because she had only been physically in the United States for 1 semester. So even if you want to do an internship, like from the moment that you get here as a master's student, you're not allowed. You have to wait 1 year before you can, or 2 semesters before you can start working. So if you start in the fall, you can start an internship in the summer, not before that. So that was a master's program. And then I think with when we got into the PhD, that's when I started noticing that I had to do a lot more paperwork than other people. Because for every training opportunity, every kind of, we call them externships or like practicum experiences, I have to fill out multiple documents explaining why I want to do this, for how many credits I want to do this, who's going to supervise me, and how it will impact my career. So I have to like, even though it's a requirement for our program, I have to explain every time this is how it will reach my career goals. And then there's this like document with all these like check marks, like it will help me, professional development with, teamwork, everything. And I have to explain why my externship will help me with this. And I have to do this for every semester. So for the fall, for the winter, for spring and summer because, for example, fall ends in December, but I keep working, until our spring semester starts. So I have to do it again for like December and January. So it's just a lot of like additional paperwork.
Even
And
though
then
like you might be at the same site.
yes. Yeah, I have to redo everything again. And like my supervisors have to sign off of it. And everyone the first time is like, what is this paperwork? Like, what do you mean I have to sign this? I've never seen this before. And I'm always like, I'm sorry. But this is just and it's to fulfill your visa requirements, to show that you're doing an internship and that you're working outside of your school, even if it's unpaid, that is still related to your program and to your career. Yeah. Um and then there's also, I think, just you can only work 20 hours at your school. So if I was doing like clinical work at school, I wasn't allowed to do any like TA job in addition to that because all of my time was taken up by, working on at like the clinic at school.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be like, you really have to like calculate your hours per week and see what you can do.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. I remember in second year, I think it was, when we were at the counseling center, there was an issue with like the hours because technically we were working 25, but as an international student, you're only allowed 20.
We had first gotten a contract for like 25 hours, that everyone was allowed to work 25 hours. And I had double checked, with the program, with the director, like that it is 25 hours for everyone. And they said, sure, it's fine. Turned out it was not fine. And yeah, that like those moments are so frustrating because people don't realize like if you work too much, you are breaking your visa requirements and you are at risk of losing your student visa. So even if it's like 5 hours a week, 2 hours a week, like not such a big deal, right? It is a big deal. Like you're breaking your visa requirements. So that was quite stressful when they were like, actually, you can only work like 20 hours a week. And it was like, great, thanks.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that year. And yeah, that was a particularly stressful time for you.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Um, so I think, one thing that is frustrating, is that a lot of like our faculty also just don't know about these requirements for international students. And there's not a lot of international students in our PhD program. I think there's like maybe one per cohort, if even. And they oftentimes, when they talk about like, especially clinical requirements, they talk about it for like everyone, not realizing that there are a different set of rules for international students. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, given that, because I think you're right, the programs have a habit of like speaking very generally when it comes to their requirements, not recognizing that like it may not apply to everyone in the same way. And so I'm guessing, or I'm thinking like, if you knew then or knew now what am I trying to say? If you knew then what you know now, do you feel like you would have done anything differently or approached anything differently?
I would have talked a lot more to like international students who were in a cohort above us, because I even feel like I did not get a lot of information from like older international students about how to like navigate this. So I felt like I was just like reinventing the wheel, which was quite frustrating. And I also just wished that like program faculty would just inform themselves a little bit better about the requirements. Like I have definitely started reaching out to like our clinical director about like, hey, this is what I am, bumping against. You should be aware of this. And I've now also started like really connecting to every international student in like the cohort below us just to be like, use me as a resource so that you don't feel like you're reinventing the wheel. Because there's so many questions that people have that like I know the answer to because I've gone through it and I don't want people to feel like they have to go through this alone. So yeah, I think I would have just, I think, contacted a lot more people and asked for a lot more help.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, speaking of reinventing the wheel, we're about to go on internship.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, I don't, again, like my knowledge is very limited, but like, are there any obstacles that you're anticipating with like hours and the fact, internship is paid?
So I've talked to like our international student office about this already, and I will have to continue filing the documents to for my internship to show why my internship is important. But they are aware of it. So and they're also I think they're gonna try to make sure that I only have to do it once instead of having to do it like 4 times. Because I contacted them and I'm like, it's stupid that I have to do this for the same place. But other than that, there should not be an issue with the amount of hours or the fact that it is paid because I'm not working at the school and because it is like an internship that is required by our program. I am allowed to work 40 hours and to be paid by it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, other than sort of what we've already discussed, is there any sort of like advice or just like heads up that you would give to international students who are looking at PhD programs in the States?
Yeah. I would just say like start early, just again to get all of your stuff together, like start early, really reach out to international student office. I think I reached out maybe a little bit too much to just like the regular faculty and not enough to the actual international student office to be aware of some of the requirements. So if you're reaching out to like a PI that you're really interested in, also reach out to like the international student offices of that school just to be aware of everything and explain what you want to do. Um, know that some training opportunities will not be available to you. Like I cannot work for anything that is federally funded. So Bureau of Prisons, the VA, even some state hospitals have like programs that are federally funded. There's a lot of things that you cannot do. So if you're, for example, really interested in working with like the military, like forget it. So just know what you want to focus on and if those opportunities will be available for you as well. And yeah, know that you'll be on your own a lot and that you'll have to like advocate for yourself in certain situations. Not because people are like malicious, but because people just are not aware of the situation that you are in.
Yeah, yeah. And it's terrible to have to like try to navigate that alone.
Yeah. And I think I've been really lucky with like you guys that I can vent to and I'm married to an American, so I also am lucky enough that I have like an American citizen to navigate like some things with, which I is like an extreme advantage for like certain things for sure, and which has taken a lot of stress away.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think you're speaking to just like the importance of, oh my God, sorry, my cat, of just like trying to make sure that you build a support system around you.
Yeah, very, very much. Yeah, even if it is just to let go of your frustrations, it's very helpful.
Yeah. Okay. Well, enough of the logistical stuff. And speaking of internship, so going back to forensic psychology, you are one of the few people I know who are pursuing that. And yeah, tell us a little bit more about like what drew you to it.
I mean, I'm always a little like embarrassed to say like what drew me to it. Like, but in all honesty, it was the show CSI Miami. I just thought it was so cool. I don't know if I was drawn by like the Hummers and like Miami as like, a Belgian girl in a really small town, but I was like, oh my God, like working with criminals, it is so cool. Because, like on the show, they do a lot more than detective work. They also like get in the mind of the criminal. And I'm like, that is such a fun way to like think about psychology to like get into like the mind of some people who have like done heinous things or so I think that's how it started and then the more that I actually started like reading articles about it and then ended up working with a prison population, I just really enjoyed their presentation. A lot of the people that I work with are severely mentally ill, and I just really enjoy working with with that people who have like schizophrenia, with people who are bipolar. I think that they really like keep me on my feet. It's never a boring day. I like the intersection that when you are providing therapy or group, that you always have to keep like the legal questions in mind. I'm now really focusing on, creating insight into people to make sure that they are not dangerously mentally ill anymore, and they can maybe go to a civil, less secure hospital, and they can leave the forensic high secure hospital. So it's like additional things that you have to think of. I've also noticed that I really enjoy the people who work in forensic settings. It's like a tight-knit team because you really need to rely on other people. And there's a lot of like dark humor to kind of like get through the day, which I also really enjoy. And then there's also the assessment part of it. You get some really, really interesting cases, which I really, really enjoy.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, you're a bit different from a couple of people in our cohort because you were already sort of working in the field before you started the program. So, what was that like?
Yeah. So I worked for a year in the Netherlands at like a forensic clinic. And I thought it really was like a great reminder of me that I want to continue doing this. Like I will invest in a PhD program because this is a population that I just really enjoy working with. And I think it just got me more comfortable with knowing what I wanted in my career, which I'm very grateful for. And it also gave me like my therapist character already. Like I kind of knew who I was as a therapist and how I approach patients before starting the PhD. So I felt like I did a lot of like the soul searching before actually like getting into the program, which I was grateful for.
Yeah. So you really sort of came into the program knowing like this is what I want to do. This
Yeah.
is the career I want to pursue.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then how did that impact like the sorts of like training opportunities you sought out?
Yeah. Um, so even though our program is not like a forensic program, I looked at a lot of like inpatient hospitals where there were like justice involved patients. And I decided also to focus for 1 year solely on assessment because writing reports and writing very good reports is a very, very important part of forensic psychology and working forensically. So I really wanted to make sure that I was very comfortable with, administering tests, interpreting, and then writing reports because English is not my first language. So I definitely felt like I was kind of at a disadvantage compared to other people. So I really wanted to get out of my comfort zone and like force myself to just write a lot to kind of get into that flow.
Yeah. Do you feel like it's been easier or tougher to sort of follow a forensic psych pathway being in like our program versus like a more forensically oriented program?
Yeah. So I'm at a forensic externship now. I'm gonna go to an excellent forensic program for my internship. So I think that I got a lot of very good clinical experience at like inpatient hospitals or like at my assessment-based externship, because they really want you to just be able to connect with patients first of all, and just be used to working with a tougher population because it's like, if you can work on an acute inpatient unit, you can work on a forensic unit. Um, so would I have liked more forensic focus? Like for sure, maybe in my classes, but I don't think that it put me at like a disadvantage to be in this program because I'm actually quite happy with the like the therapeutic training that I received at like previous externships. And I think that really set me up for working with a very intense population.
Yeah. Okay. And so, correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I know from like our testing teacher, there's like additional training that you have to do after you're licensed in order to like really sort of do that kind of work, right?
Yeah. So some people are board certified, which is like a whole long process. You don't really, so then you can call yourself like a board certified forensic psychologist. I'm not 100% sure if that is something that I will do. And if I will do it, it will be in 10 years because it does mean 2 years of studying and presenting and everything again. And it's like, there's no way I want to do that right now. But even So there is like psychodiagnostic assessment, which a lot of psychologists do, and then there's forensic assessment, which, for example, I'm doing right now is seeing if a person is competent to stand trial. So it is a very different way of just, we're not looking at what are the problem, like the patient's problems, like are they delusional, like are they depressed, anything like that. We're really answering legal questions with psychological methods. So it's a very different way of writing. It's a lot more succinct. You have to pay a lot of attention to detail, and the type of questions that we're asking and the type of measures that we're using are also things that are not taught in our program and that you really have to like learn on forensic placements. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, what else that we haven't talked about yet? Do you feel like if folks want to pursue like forensic psych on this track, like what do you feel like they should know or like steps they should take?
Yeah. I think looking for like practicum placements or externship placements in inpatient hospitals and really working with people with severe mental illness or severe personality disorders are great training opportunities. And then also, really getting very comfortable with assessment, I think is a very important part of it because like these reports need to be like churned out. I don't have a lot of time because there's certain court dates that we have to meet. And if we're late, like we get a slap on the wrist. So it's just getting kind of comfortable. So even I think like working in places that are kind of like high tempo will be good if you want to work in forensic settings, because there is definitely a lot of time pressure like every day.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, you were at an assessment only site for externship last year, and I remember you saying like you were churning out like 1 or 2 reports every week. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think other than that, know how to take care of yourself. I have to listen to people talk about their instant offense in quite a lot of details, which, can be impactful at certain points. So just, know who you can go and vent to, like find your supervisor that you really trust and just do a lot of self-care. I think is really, really important as well, in any setting, and any PhD program, like know what to do to take care of yourself, really.
Yeah. Huh. Well, I mean, I think that's all. Is there anything like we haven't covered?
I don't think so, no.
Okay, one last question. And I don't know if you can share this on camera, but if you can, please. What is like the most interesting case you've had so far? Like super vague, like no PHI.
I think like one of the very interesting ones that I have now is a person who allegedly killed someone and then made a stew and fed with the person's remains and then fed it to homeless people. The jury is still out if that actually happened, but that is kind of like the urban legend around the case. So so that's always quite interesting to be like, what happened? And he, the patient disagrees. Yeah, it's interesting.
Mm-hmm. So like, is that like on the extreme end, or would you say that's more like
we get a lot of I think we get a lot of like assault cases, people stealing cell phones. We also have a high number of subway pushers, which is interesting, and unfortunately, a lot of people who like hurt their family. Yeah, especially their moms.
So really intense cases.
Yeah.
But like you said, self-care, finding your support group or support network, group. Also maybe a support group.
Yeah. I'm very lucky, I think, with like the other like externs and interns at my program. So it's kind of like an informal support group right there.
Okay, well, thank you again. This was so good.
Yeah, this was fun.
So I once again somehow forgot to record an outro for this video.
But I really do hope that this interview was interesting and helpful for you. Like I said at the beginning, if there were any questions that we didn't get to that you still have after my conversation with Helene, feel free to leave your questions in the comments and I will relay them to her and hopefully I can get you some answers. But yeah, that's really all for this video. So thank you for watching, especially if you made it all the way to the end. I truly appreciate it. Leave me a comment down below if you have any questions or suggestions for future videos. And as always, like, share, and subscribe, and click that little notification bell so you don't miss my next upload. And I'll see you in my next one. Bye.